I've reviewed thousands of first pages, and most of them don't actually make me curious enough to keep reading. Now, don't get me wrong. The writers whose pages I've read are incredibly talented. Their prose is often beautiful, their sentences polished, their craft well studied. These are writers who've taken classes, attended conferences, and put in the work. But something about their pages just doesn't hit the way they hope it will. The writing feels fine, competent, but not electric, not alive. It doesn't make me selfishly desperate to know what happens to their protagonist next. And that's the secret key if you want readers and agents to keep turning pages. The good news? This problem almost always boils down to one essential, often missing ingredient: interiority. Hello and welcome to the Speculative Fiction Writing Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Heather Davis. I'm a book coach, developmental editor, and fellow storyteller. And this is the show that's all about how to brainstorm, write, edit, publish, and sell a powerful speculative fiction novel. And maybe just change the world too. Interiority comes up more than any other craft topic when I'm working with writers. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they're collectively getting tired of seeing my comments pointing out that they need more of it. So why do I talk about interiority so much? Good question. Because it really is the single most important element of your writing. That's right, not plot, not character arc, but this one seemingly insignificant component of the manuscript really does make the difference between a novel that resonates and one that falls flat. So what is interiority anyway? That's a great question. Interiority is your protagonist's internal world. It's all the stuff that happens inside their head as they process the external world and try to make sense of what's happening to them as your plot unfolds. It's a combination of their emotions and interpretations and the meanings that they read into things. It's literally how they view the world and how they view themselves. When you write interiority well, it allows your reader to connect with your protagonist in a way that is unique to the medium of writing. It's something that people can't experience through TV or movies, which is why books are still beloved by so many people. Interiority includes the big stuff like how your protagonist understands the situation they're in, but it also includes the small stuff like word choice and tone. For example, let me read you one sentence that's dry narration versus the same sentence only written through the lens of interiority. Okay, here's the interiority-free dry narration version. I sat on the green couch and waited for the psychiatrist to see me. Now here's the version with interiority. I sat on that ugly, vomit-colored couch and waited for the shrink to call me into his office so he could tell me in detail exactly what was wrong with me. Now, doesn't that second version sound so much less dry? Can't you get a sense of the type of person that might think of waiting for their psychiatrist that way? Okay, let's dig even deeper. Interiority has two major pillars, both of which are incredibly important to consider as you try to bring your story to life. Because each pillar is vitally important to your story and takes some time to explain and digest, I've decided to break this important topic into 2 episodes. So yes, that means that I'll explain the first pillar today and the next pillar in my next episode. So be on the lookout for that. Let's go ahead and dive into the first pillar. The first pillar is called intellectual and emotional processing. I know what you're thinking. Heather, what the heck does that even mean? No worries, I'll explain everything. Intellectual and emotional processing includes your protagonist's inner monologues, their opinions, their beliefs, their hopes, their fears, the questions they ask themselves, and the possible answers they give themselves. It includes what they expect to have happen in a scene. It includes their inner monologue, how they interpret and make sense of the events in the plot, and what they think other characters are thinking. It also includes what they assume another character means by an action or a line of dialogue. Finally, it includes how they justify their actions and inactions. And honestly, I could go on and on because it includes so many things. Basically, it is their point of view. It's the vantage point from which they see everything. But, of course, to really understand interiority, you need to see it in action. That's right, you need some examples. So let me give you an example from A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This novel is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy and is written from the perspective of Coriolanus Snow, the evil president of Pan Am from the original story. Now, in this novel, he's just a teenager, and we quickly learn that the war that resulted in the Hunger Games being invented left his family broken and poor. Coriolanus wants to prove himself at school, so he will rise in ranks and bring honor and wealth back to his family. As the year's Hunger Games begins, he's assigned as a mentor to a young woman from District 12. He doesn't really care so much about her well-being at first, but he knows that the more successful she is, the more successful he will be. So he decides he's going to go meet her and introduce himself and hopefully gain her trust. One thing leads to another, though, and Coriolanus ends up locked in the back of a cage-like truck with all of the tributes as they're being taken to a holding center. So that's where this scene picks up. First, I'll read it to you stripped of interiority. Then I'll read you the real version with the interiority fully intact, the way Suzanne Collins wrote it. Here's the version with no interiority. "Let's kill him," the tiny boy said viciously. "Can't do nothing worse to us." Several other tributes murmured in agreement and took a step in. Coriolanus went rigid with fear. His heart pounded in his chest, and he crouched slightly, fists extended in anticipation of the imminent attack. Notice that in this example, we are fully on the surface in the scene. We are in Coriolanus' body, yes, but we're not in his mind. We have no idea how Coriolanus is making sense of this situation because his interior world is not on the page. Now, here's the version with interiority as it appeared in the novel. "Let's kill him," the tiny boy said viciously. "Can't do nothing worse to us." Several other tributes murmured in agreement and took a step in. Coriolanus went rigid with fear. Kill him? Did they really mean to beat him to death right here in broad daylight in the middle of the Capitol? Suddenly, he knew they did. What, after all, did they have to lose? His heart pounded in his chest, and he crouched slightly, fists extended in anticipation of the imminent attack. Did you notice the difference there? The second version draws us in so much more because we feel like we're inside Coriolanus' head, privy to his thoughts and his fears, instead of being locked out. Okay, let's look at one more example. This one is from The Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. In this scene, the protagonist, Violet, has just walked into her mother's office. Her mother is the commander of the Basgiath War College, and she's recently forced Violet to join the Dragon Riders Quadrant. The problem is that Violet has trained her entire life to be a scribe, not a dragon rider. In fact, the Riders Quadrant is the most dangerous path at the college, and there's more than a 50% chance that a student will die before graduation. On top of that, Violet has a rare connective tissue disorder that causes her joints to dislocate easily, which puts her at an even greater disadvantage. So that's where we come into this scene. Violet steps into her mother's office, and Violet's older sister is already there, arguing that Violet should not be forced into the Dragon Riders Quadrant. Here's the version without interiority. "She doesn't stand a chance," Mira shouts as I force the heavy door open and the weight of my pack shifts forward, nearly taking me down. The general curses from behind her desk, and I grab onto the back of the crimson upholstered couch to catch my balance. "Damn it, Mom, she can't even handle her rucksack," Mira snaps, rushing to my side. "I'm fine." My cheeks heat with mortification, and I force myself upright. "Oh, Violet." Worried brown eyes look down at me as strong hands brace my shoulders. Okay, again, we are on the surface in that scene. We are not inside Violet's head at all. The only context we have for what anything means is what's happening in dialogue and what's happening with their body language and their actions. Now, here's the version with interiority as it appeared in the novel. "She doesn't stand a chance," Mira shouts as I force the heavy door open and the weight of my pack shifts forward, nearly taking me down. Shit. The general curses from behind her desk, and I grab onto the back of the crimson upholstered couch to catch my balance. Damn it, Mom, she can't even handle her rucksack, Mira snaps, rushing to my side. I'm fine. My cheeks heat with mortification, and I force myself upright. She's been back for 5 minutes and is already trying to save me. Because you need saving, you fool. I don't want this. I don't want any of this Rider Quadrant shit. It's not like I have a death wish. I would have been better off failing the admission test to Basgiath and going straight to the army with the majority of conscripts. But I can handle my rucksack, and I will handle myself. Oh, Violet, worried brown eyes look down at me as strong hands brace my shoulders. Did you hear the difference between those two versions? The first version with no interiority stayed totally on the surface. It was flat and distant and gave us nothing to hold on to. But the second version with interiority in place pulled us right in close to the protagonist. It let us feel what she felt and understand how she was making sense of what was happening. She became our decoder ring for the entire scene. Okay, now that you're getting a better idea of what interiority really is, how do you know what to include in a character's interiority? After all, the possibilities feel endless. They could kind of be thinking about or feeling anything, right? Well, here's the truth. Your protagonist is a real person. At least they feel that way to you, the writer, and they should feel that way to the reader too, which means they're almost always internally processing whatever is happening in a scene. So when something important happens on the page, let's say an unexpected event or another character's action or a line of dialogue, you need to slip into therapist mode. Ask your protagonist questions like, why do you think that thing just happened? How does that thing make you feel? What does it make you think about or remember? What are you hoping will happen next? What are you afraid might happen next? What do you think the other character really meant by that line of dialogue or by that action? Now, obviously, you can't answer all of these questions for every single event that happens on the page, but you can ask your protagonist a handful of these types of questions, and then you can choose the answers that are the juiciest and the most emotionally revealing and the most relevant to the scene, the plot, and the protagonist arc, and you put that on the page. Okay, at this point, there's only one detail left to go over. And that's how you can make interiority feel fully integrated into a scene instead of tacked on at the end. Do you remember what I said a few minutes ago about important scene events? When something meaningful happens externally, an event, an action, a line of dialogue that might carry emotional weight, you have to pause, dip into your protagonist's mind, and let them process it. We'll stay there for a line or two, or 5, depending on how much processing they have to do, and then we'll return to the external world and keep going with the scene. So that's the trick. That's the formula. Something happens externally, and then we dip into your protagonist's mind. We go internal, and they process that event or that action or that dialogue. They tell us what it means and how they feel about it. And then we bounce back out to the external scene. And if you go back and listen to the examples that I shared, you'll notice that's exactly the structure that Suzanne Collins and Rebecca Yarros were using. External, internal, external. Okay, my friends, that's it for today. If you want all of my examples, graphics, and juicy guiding questions, make sure to snag the workbook for this episode. That link is waiting for you in the show notes. And remember, in the next episode, we're digging into the second pillar of interiority, which is backstory. And oh boy, this one gets writers fired up. So make sure you follow this podcast so you don't miss it. Until next time, keep writing, keep dreaming, and remember, the world needs your stories right now. So don't you dare give up on your novel or yourself. Talk soon.